Hello, it's Jade Simmons here. Welcome to this early edition of the Daily Debrief. I am your one and truly independent candidate for 2020. That's right, I'm running for President of the United States of America. And for those of you who want to learn more about my candidacy, hurry on over to Operation Restoration 2020.com. That's where you're going to donate if you believe in what we're doing. It's also where you're going to sign up to get involved. Many of you have been hitting us up wanting to know, how do you help? We're so excited about your enthusiasm, which is why we are so thrilled to be able to announce that on Friday, April 6th, I believe that's the date, April 6th, so we're having our first volunteer kickoff session. What really thrills me to no end is that when we join up with people, we're not just looking to take from you, but we're so excited to be helping you activate in your own purpose, your own skills, giftings, and ability, because you truly believe in our mission to spread the message of restoration across this nation. So who am I? Once again, I'm running for president. Yes, for real, for real. Everybody keeps asking me, is this really happening? Is this just a symbolic thing, or are you serious about running? I am as serious as a heart attack. Let me tell you why. You should know that I am definitely not here to play. I'm here to stay. I'm not going anywhere. I'm also here to slay. And I am looking to do what is long overdue, which is to slay the spirit of division that has been running rampant in our nation. That division has been profitable for everybody in power. But those of us, we the people, remember us, are actually the only ones paying the price. Good news. I always promise to start with good news. The good news is that stimulus bill has passed, which is an incredible example of what we look like when we function as a unified nation. In record time, in about a week's time, you saw two parties that have mostly been busy fighting and opposing each other join together to create this bill that Americans so desperately need, that passed today. Let's just take a moment to praise God that that actually happened and went through. I'm excited to see us in this moment of bipartisanship. I have to be honest with you, though, and tell you that I don't think the moment will last far beyond the crisis, because it is ingrained in our political level. It's ingrained, that behavior of division. And over the years, we've seen that gap grow wider. Right now, if you look at statistics, this is literally the most divided we have ever been as a nation. And what I mean by that is that Democrats and Republicans are farther apart than ever before. But where's the opportunity in that? The opportunity is right there in the middle. I believe that I'm speaking for a demographic I call the muted middle. Those are people like you, people like me, who feel like our voices are not being heard. We are not seeing representation. If you look in the media, you will only hear from one side or the other. We're excited that in a few weeks, you're going to see me more in mainstream media. Many of you have been asking, you've been wanting to know, when are you going to be out there? Well, that's going to be coming soon. But the reason we bring you the Daily Debrief is because we don't believe that we should have to sit around and wait for you to hear a message this important. So in these Daily Debriefs, I'm bringing you not only a rehash of the news, because you can get news from just about anywhere, for better and for worse, but what I want you to begin to hear and understand is my heart for the nation, my vision for this country, as I tell you my viewpoint on things that are taking place and how I would either do things differently or do things more creatively. So I'm excited to do that. Again, good news, the stimulus has passed. Here's what's so exciting about that. I believe that your leaders should always come from a perspective of service first. And what happens there is when you serve the people first, remember, people are always watching. And there were many eyes waiting to see how this stimulus was going to turn out. And what I'm excited about is to see there has been a large amount of aid and relief that is going right away to American people, American workers. What does that do? When we behave in that way, when we serve first, our people begin to trust us more. Any of you who are business owners know what I'm talking about. You build trust in this way. You build credibility, you build participation, and maybe most importantly now in our response to COVID-19, we build cooperation. You're going to share this right now, the Daily Debrief, with people who you know are looking to see their leaders begin to serve them first. They believe in purpose-based leadership. They are tired of the division that they're seeing. And things like today, this bipartisanship makes them happy. They're not the people who are looking for opportunities to further divide. When you serve people last, the big concern about this stimulus, and we'll have to see how it plays out. I'm sure you're going to see more bills. There are definitely more pieces of relief that I would like to see in there as well. I'd like to see things more specified towards the self-employed, specifically for individual artists as well. That goes into being self-employed. But what happens when you serve people last, if they only see you serving seemingly big corporations, what happens is, excuse me, you build a culture of suspicion. That suspicion breeds distrust, doubt, and it causes us to be slow to action. That's what you've been seeing for the last few weeks. So the good news is we work together to have something pass. What we want to be sure to demand as the American people is that this unity persist. I'm worried that it won't, which is one of the reasons that I'm running for president of the United States. I'm adding a new segment tonight called Don't Fall For It. It's really important to me that the news you get from me, the perspectives you get from me are unfiltered. You're going to notice that they're not coming to you with any lopsided agenda. I will keep saying it, that my mission is to serve the nation. I don't have an agenda because I am unaffiliated with either party. That's actually really hard for a lot of people to believe. We actually had one media outlet that asked if I was a Democrat, which they assume because I'm African American and female. And when we said no, they said, well, are you Republican? Which would sound right to them because I am a very serious Christian. And when I refused to identify as either, they outright told us that they did not cover independence. That's why I say there's something that I'm calling the muted middle. Those of us who have very strong viewpoints, we are convicted in our beliefs, but because we don't adhere to the extremes, you don't hear our voices represented. That's why I'm here. Here's what I don't want you to fall for. Even in the midst of the joy of passing the stimulus, what I want you to be careful to not give into is the lopsided positioning now of what's in that bill. You will hear people on the right throwing shade at the fact that the Kennedy Center received a lot of aid. A lot of arts organizations received aid. And if you don't read the bill, you'll assume we're just giving money to a building. Here's what I want you to remember. There are people inside of these buildings. Those people also need relief. Those employers also need to be able to pay their workers. When you look at arts-based organizations, when this shutdown happened, not a full shutdown, but when everything sort of stopped, you had conferences, performances, everything canceled suddenly. And you think about the fact that their base of revenue comes from those events. When they're no longer having events, people can't fill those seats. When those seats aren't filled, people aren't getting paid. So make sure you read for yourselves parts of the bill that you're curious about. Don't just give in to the shaming you'll see from both sides. On the left, you're going to see them shame the right for bailing out big business. That's the phrase you're going to hear. It's so dangerous. Our words can be so dangerous right now. You want to be sure that your leaders aren't spending all their time demonizing one industry, one demographic. When we demonize business, when we call all business leaders crooks, when we call all CEOs shady, when we call it bailing out big business, we've forgotten that there are people who work for those businesses. So even when you hear things like Amazon or Facebook, or you hear insert bank name here, remember there are people, regular people that you and I know who go to work, punch a clock 9 to 5, who are suddenly seeing a reduction in their salaries. I'm a small business owner. We had to have a very hard meeting yesterday about what we will do moving forward for my business, which survives. Our revenue comes from events, conferences, performances, yes? So there are business owners like myself who I know I'm not a crook. I know I'm not evil. And I'm looking for the best way. And most of us, many of these employers will self-sacrifice first. We'll give up our salaries first because we know how hard our people work and we want to be able to serve them. So these new small business loans that are coming out, I think it's something like 350 billion. I don't have last night's notes. If I want to make sure, I don't want to make sure I'm not misinforming you. 500 billion to big businesses, 360 billion, to small businesses. So when you see things like they're bailing out big business, go back and read and see what the big business is. Look at the corporate structure of that business and understand who will get these funds. What we have to keep our eye on is to make sure that when we hear businesses are being given support, that they are making sure that support goes down to those workers. Many of the stipulations include that we as business owners, if we're going to receive these loans, if they're going to be forgiven, then we must keep the employees that we have. These are powerful stipulations that we didn't really see a lot of back in 2008. So again, that's good news. Here's what you don't want to fall for. Don't fall for, you're going to hear people who love the president will say, we have to open back up quickly. All the people who want to be shut down are lazy people who don't want to work. They just want to sit home and collect a check. I'm going to need you to side eye anyone when you hear that. And you're going to respond, that people who want to shut down, the majority of people who want to shut down are concerned about saving lives. They are not looking for handouts, but they are being affected negatively by the fact that the economy is very slow right now. Don't give into that rhetoric. Don't also give into the rhetoric that people who want to go back to work are all heartless. You see what happens here is both sides grab onto these black and white statements, this heightened rhetoric, and all it does is further divide us. Understand there is merit on both sides of the approaches, and we need to understand what's the best approach that's going to serve the most people for the most sustainable amount of time. So you also want to not buy into, the president has had a change of tone when it comes to speaking about China and the Chinese. You'll remember for a few days there, he was calling it the Chinese virus. And I was warning you, do not give into any attempts to be swayed by anything that seems like xenophobia. It is very important right now that we don't blame our Chinese American neighbors for this. This is not their fault. And even if you believe that China either bungled this, which I do believe their handling of the onset of this virus, which I've been following for months now, months before the news really came to the States, it was not good. It really was wrong. And there's truth in that. But even if you buy into the conspiracy theories that are coming out now rampantly on the internet, which I encourage you not to buy into conspiracy theories, but to do your own solid research. Even if you buy into that, we have to be so careful that the language we use doesn't demonize people who really are our neighbors right here at home. So why is the president changing his tone and suddenly he's not calling it the Chinese disease? He's not talking as bad about China. Always remember one of the scriptures I love. It says that we should come let us reason. Don't take anything for face value. Don't take anything I'm saying at face value. I believe that America should be the most informed nation on the face of the earth. We have so much access to information. We have time to do the homework before giving into heightened rhetoric that's being positioned to us. One of the reasons that you may see a change now in the president's tone is that many of our politicians on the right and the left will use these situations. They will politicize these situations to strengthen their base. So you'll hear, let's say, Nancy Pelosi come out and she will point out parts of the bill that she doesn't agree with. And she's saying that so that her supporters can hear, I'm still standing for you on our causes, right? So the president will do something inflammatory like this by calling it the Chinese virus. And then what will happen is it's his way of saying to his base, look, this is not my fault. I'm not to blame. This is all China's fault. And that helps his base have more belief in who he is. And so when they hear the news filtered out in their direction, they're not holding their leader accountable. You have to hold your leaders accountable. You have to hold us accountable for what we say, and you have to hold us accountable for what we do, right? You deserve not to be misinformed. You deserve to get straight messages and not mixed ones. So don't fall for sudden changes in tone. Always investigate the reason behind that. I believe that your leader, which I would be, is to be solely focused on what the best message is for the right moment in time to keep the most people safe. I pledge not to ever give you messages that are the most convincing just to get your vote or to keep what is my base intact. Your leaders should have one base. The President of the U.S., her base should be the nation. Your leader should not have an agenda. Your leader should be on a mission. Okay, so moving into my next segment here, that's the Don't Fall For It segment. I hope that that helps. As you hear rhetoric that is ridiculously lopsided, I dare you to push back. And you don't have to push back in anger or animosity or in wrong language, profane language. You can push back with reason, with compassion, with research, and simply say, I'm sorry, that's not the truth, right? And push back. Why do we push back? It is our right. Right? And talk about the right, the freedom of speech. This is how it should be used. Not to bully people or demonize others, but to freely speak about what you know so that you can share that knowledge. Also be open to receiving knowledge. I believe a world leader, that's who we are. We're supposed to be the world leader. We must now begin to lead by example. More good news. Our president said today that any surplus that we have when we get on track will go to help other parts of the world. You would have heard the head of the World Health Organization say a few days ago that the greatest nations, the most powerful, the wealthiest ones, must in these times already be thinking about how to help other nations. Now, some of you have been hearing we should be America first. America first is one thing. We should never be America only. I promise you, as good as that sounds to some people, it will always come to bite us. That's what it's doing right now, because we have spent the last few years isolating. We have been unattached. We could have been much farther ahead in handling of this epidemic had we not been so concerted in our effort to isolate. So I'm excited to hear the president say now that we're looking to how we can help other nations. The problem is we're so behind in how we've handled this that we're going to now have to spend a lot of time, most of our time, making sure we have what we need. So I think that we have to be so powerfully intentional about always leading from a humanitarian aspect. And I think the first humans we must serve are right here. We have to make sure that we're not willingly sacrificing our people. Our people. You heard me say on Twitter today, I love Easter. I think Easter, for a Christian especially, has the most incredible symbolism. Yes, so I personally love the idea that everything will be resurrected around that time. But we cannot put a false date on what we're seeing. We must make sure that everything we're doing is sustainable. My sincere concern is that we are handling this right now in a way, even in the way that we talk about it, that is sending so many mixed signals. We are costing American lives. Whether we're talking about cures that we hope will be available, there are people now that are taking the words of our leaders to heart. They are going and seeking out their own cures. I mentioned the other night that I have a family member who has been challenged with lupus for over 20 years now. And he was saying that there's now a shortage in hydrochloroquine because everybody is rushing out to get that medicine to treat coronavirus. There is no vaccine right now for coronavirus. So please do not be fooled into thinking that. There are methods that are being tested to make sure that we can fight this, not just now, it'll probably be later that we'll come across a vaccine and eventually develop possibly a cure. But it's so important now that our leaders are giving us information that we can act on that are not going to do us harm. I think we have to pay special attention now to how we interact with our international partners and allies. I want us to start thinking about the way that we interact internationally as a way to build up goodwill. I'm always going to speak to you from a humanitarian aspect, but also from a strategic aspect. We're not only looking to build up goodwill, but we're looking to make the types of deposits that give us leverage for the future. Even the Word of God says that we should be the lender and not the borrower, and that we should operate both gently and shrewdly. And I think those things are not mutually exclusive. We can do all of those things. So I think we have to now keep our eyes on China as well, because while I really feel they had mishandled the onset of this illness. You might have seen in the news a month or so ago, one of their lead doctors very early on in the very early stages of the virus was saying, we are not taking this seriously enough. He was actually predicting this would be a pandemic. I think you have to be in 23 countries before it's considered that. He was saying that when it was still in China. He was worried that they did not have the amount of supplies that they needed. And this man went out on a limb in China, not known for transparency or freedom of speech. And he said to his people, this is bad. This is worse than we thought. He was then forced to go on national television and recant his findings and say that he was wrong. He was forced to apologize and say this wasn't a big deal after all. About a month or so ago, he died from coronavirus. Some don't believe he actually died from the virus. Won't get into conspiracy theory there, but here's what we need to know. There are some questions we need to be asking of China. And I believe that as president, I would like to work to ensure that once this crisis is managed, we make some demands about how epidemics are reported. What are the reporting expectations? There should be handling standards between nations. Right now, World Health Organization, what they're doing is focusing on the solutions and on managing. I think they're also looking the other way right now when it comes to dealing with a nation that we're going to have to really look at, because we're going to have to talk about attaching consequences, either where trade and sanctions are concerned. We can look back now and see that China does have a history, a lack of transparency that has also been connected to the spreading of SARS as well, a couple years back. So these are things that I think our leaders can't ignore, but you don't want your leader to be driven by emotion. Today, this is not the time that we deal with our international partners in a way that is inflammatory. So we're going to have to always make sure that we're balanced in our responses. And so in order to do that, your leader must have the emotional capacity to balance her response. She has to know when we go on the defensive, when we focus on solutions, when we manage consequences. There's a give and a take. And I think that's something that the American people should expect of their leaders. I want to look now at a theory about how we're handling this crisis. So I know that we are proud. We are proud people. We are a proud nation. I think it is a powerful thing to be able to have solutions on our own. I think it is unwise to turn away help. We know that there is wisdom in having an abundance of counselors, and some of our counselors will come from the world over. But I think that while we can claim to be one of the wealthiest nation in the world, I think we have underutilized the wealth of brain power we have right here. I just saw Marshawn Daniels join. This lady is a leader in terms of helping small business owners really go from being sole entrepreneurs to people who have enterprises. Did we tap her when it came to looking at what kind of help and relief small business owners are going to need right now? We should be utilizing the brain power of America's best and brightest. There are lay people that we are not utilizing right now. We should have councils that don't just call on the heads of major corporations, but that look at the real life experiences of everyday Americans who are already serving as servant leaders in their communities and amongst certain demographics. Think about the amazing corporations we have that we have not utilized their creativity for this crisis. I was just at Chick-fil-A earlier today, and I was marveling, as always, at their efficiency in the drive-thru. If we actually had all of the testing kits that we needed, why aren't we utilizing someone like Amazon to send out free testing kits to homes? Because now we know we don't even need a professional to actually to take the test the same way. We used to have very highly skilled people give the test. They now have a newer version of the test. Wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody like Amazon was delivering free kits? If Chick-fil-A, if we were working with them to establish efficient drive-through testing, we could be using the brain power right now of Amazon to develop apps like they have in other Asian countries that will tell you where quarantines are happening, tell you where shutdowns are happening, and tell you where a high rate of infection is happening. These are things we could be providing to our people if we utilize the brain power of America's best and brightest. I think we've seen a bit of a dangerous version of isolationism that is costing us in more ways than one. I propose that we begin to establish purpose-based relationships with businesses. We don't need a leader that only caters to business or a leader who demonizes business. We don't want lopsided relationships that are only highly transactional and only highly beneficial to big business. When you do that, what happens is when you ask them to do something that requires sacrifice, they're not likely to oblige as quickly because of the dynamic that we've set up. We're seeing that now with the president's back and forth with corporations that he's looking to help make ventilators. I think we have to build purpose-based partnerships that are not only transactional, but will also foster goodwill between our people and these companies that are serving them powerfully. We have to remind companies that we're here to serve in the first place. We're here to serve in the first place. That servant-based leadership that I think when you have it at the top, that's what's more likely to trickle down more than anything else. I think you're going to see a lot of plans now that are going to help us survive when a pandemic hits. I expect to see Joe Biden's plan for that. Bernie Sanders has a plan for that. I'm sure Elizabeth Warren still has a plan for that. And we heard the president talking very recently about how after going through this, we're going to have a plan. But I believe that after a lesson like this, an emergency plan is actually not enough. Even a new heightened emergency plan. In fact, I think an emergency plan will always be too little too late, which is why I'm excited to release in a matter of weeks a plan for pandemic proofing our nation. It's going to ensure that we're never caught off guard again like this, and that we can actually help revitalize certain economic sectors. We've got farmers right now who've been hard hit from our tariff policies. We've got factories that have been closed down. Imagine if we could purposely revitalize those industry in a way that would help us be pandemic proof for the future. We were caught flat-footed unnecessarily. We know now that as early as February 20th, 21st, these issues were brought to the attention of our current administration and they weren't acted upon. Now, we don't know why that is, but we know now that for whatever reason, we didn't move ahead when we could have. And I'll tell you what, February 20th already would have also been very late. But I think there's a level of self-satisfaction and denial that we can't afford into the future. I believe that you need now a leader who understands people, who understands their motivations and how to motivate them to do more, to do better, to believe bigger in what our capabilities are. I believe we have to have leadership now that knows how to position for opportunity. I am here because I believe in the power of inspiring a nation to pull together and to move differently in different times. We can no longer afford misinformation, mixed messages, because they literally cost us time, progress, and if we're being honest, we can admit that they've also cost us lives. I heard a proud combat veteran say this a few weeks ago. It was so disturbing. I'd never heard it said this way before. He said, there's a saying about America that America always does the right thing too late. That America always does the right thing too late. And that got me looking in a different direction. I wanted to see if there was a pattern, and I have seen an unfortunate pattern now. We have been going through a cycle that has us usually seeing a denial of the problem. Remember, this was called a hoax early on. A denial of the need. We see a hesitant acceptance of the need. And then we see a delay on accepting proposed solutions. And then we see a begrudgingly accepting of the proposed solutions. So in instance, that's like when people are saying we should shut down, but they said that 2 weeks ago, but we're still taking a while to do it. And then I see we usually finally do what was recommended, but it comes after a tremendous loss of time. And usually that loss of time causes us to have less options, and acting late in that way usually causes us then to have to become doubly urgent, and it makes the needs we should have filled a long time harder to fulfill now. As president, I'm happy to say that would not be our mode of operation moving forward. We'll make tougher calls sooner, and we'll take bolder actions more quickly on the front end. I would commit to doing the right thing before we are forced to do it. And I think that we should only celebrate once we have truly weathered the storm together as best as possible, and when the storm is truly over. A good leader, I believe, people have been complaining now about some of the preliminary celebrations. I believe that a good leader never takes a victory lap before the people who are following him have crossed the finish line. I'll say it again. I believe that a true leader, a good leader, never takes a victory lap before the people that are following him have crossed the finish line. That's the leader that I personally pledge to be. I want you to know that I am praying for you this weekend. As you go into the weekend, I declare right now that you're going to come out on the other side of this weekend right here, healthier and more whole than ever before, that your homes and your families are not just going to be intact, but they're going to be powerfully safe and sound. I ask you to pray with me for the nation, to pray with me for our leaders, all of them, whether you like them, whether you voted for them or not. That is our mandate as citizens, that we pray for the well-being and the welfare of everyone, not just the people who you agree with, not just the ones who you believe like. And I think when we start to have more of a mindset that's unified in that way, that when we can begin to agree to disagree, but still operate in empathy, love, power, and with a sound mind, we're going to see some incredible change coming more quickly than we could have ever imagined. Before I go, I want to give a quick shout out to my team as well. These are some incredible people who have not only shared in my passion and commitment to this, but that they are bringing their own creativity and ideas to what we are trying to do for this nation. So again, if you're excited about what we're doing, if you believe this is the way that leadership should talk, this is the kind of transparency that leadership should exhibit, we encourage you to join the movement at operationrestoration2020.com. And when you go there, you're going to be able to get involved, to donate, and to find out more about what the heck we're doing here in the first place. We're here because we believe it is time for a new vision for our country, a fresh take on how we do politics. We believe that this should be a movement that doesn't just run for people, but runs with them. If that sounds good to you, I look forward to seeing you again soon. Join us on April 6th for our volunteer kickoff session, where you can learn more about how to utilize your gifts, your purpose, your talent, your skills, your ability, your anointing, your vision, your creativity to help us spread restoration across the nation. Okay? Have a blessed weekend. Share this with anyone who needs it, and I'll see you soon. Good night.